No, so this is the question. When do we want to take Chapter 4 assessment? Because I gotta like make plans, and all my plans I write in pencils right now because I'm smarter than that. What?
I know.
I'm like trying to make announcements. You just park yourself between me and the class.
May 20th.
24.
So, I can take the question in just a minute. So what we need to figure out is, you're being really awkward. What do you mean?
Both tests say Chapter 2.
Yeah, because I told you when I handed you this test, cross out 2 and write 3, and you didn't do it! Go outside! Apartment on State Street. We were up above one of the main streets in Westerville, and right down the other road was the fire station. So if they were heading anywhere north, they went right by our apartment. So Timber just got used to sitting on that couch and looking out the window, and as soon as he'd hear a siren, he'd and as it gets louder, he gets louder. They still do it, but in the backyard now, because my backyard is really close to Billingsley. So if you know Billingsley, the fire station's right there at the end of Billingsley. So if they have to go west or north, they're going past my house. So yeah, it still happens. What? I have Quattro dogs.
Mr. Hudson.
Yes.
When you were carrying on, Mr. Sherry just walked in and saw that.
I'm sure Mr. Sherry is not surprised right now.
Wouldn't have even
So, like, if he asks me about that, I will tell him it was the what if Levi's wheelchair dies, or what if, like, the what if I will carry you out of here. Alright, so today, our lesson should be fairly easy, which is why I was not worried about the fire drill taking place. We are doing inverse of trig functions today, which we've already started. Right, because I have this kind of bad habit of over-teaching. So, if we are looking at wheelchair ramps, talking about Levi getting out safely, and we know that the ramp is going to start 25 feet from the building. It's supposed to. That's how much space they have. Quit asking me questions I don't know.
Lockdowns in the pod. Don't.
I didn't make this problem.
Are you sure about that?
So.
Okay, look, we've got a book.
Why don't you have any of your books?
I have my book.
In your classes.
I've made the announcements to my other classes about, like, hey, we're missing these books, which do not serve them any benefit.
Yeah.
Like, you're trying to do your homework in the wrong book.
Why don't you help us with our treatment opportunities?
Mr. Hudson, what is tan and sin?
Yeah, can I get the
Sin! Now you're saying sin too.
Yeah, because a 7th grader reading it wouldn't know
Now, I
its
did
sign.
think it was
Is
sin
this like one of the
until
7 deadly sins?
Ah.
All
Alright.
The 7th deadly sin.
So, the rise is going to be 3 feet off the ground. That's how high the top of the stairs is. The run they have available 25 feet. We need to calculate, does it come in under the required angle restriction? Because at that point the angle is too high to be safe. So 4.6 or 4.76 is our restriction. So if we set up a slope triangle, we know the run 25, the rise of 3, and we know a theta. Now we don't actually know this angle. Be careful. Do not label this 4.76 because that's not what it is. We're trying to figure out what is this when this happens. So when we know that if we plug in tangent of 4.76, that will give us the slope. If we know the slope, we can do this backwards. And we're already familiar with this. But instead of plugging in the angle, I inverse my function, and I plug in the slope instead. So we're going to do inverse tangent of 3/25.
6.84.
Jacob, what'd you get?
I got 6.84.
Ah, I've never heard that number before. That is outside our restriction.
Yep.
So,
I'm sorry, but we're going to have to leave you behind.
now, hold up. Determine what the run should be. Set up a different problem. Determine what an acceptance. Now, there's multiple answers. But determine what the shortest run could be that would be within requirements. I'm changing the problem from what they have because we already know about inverse operations a little bit. If we can't change the height of the stairs, right? The height of the stairs is fixed.
So are you going
Whoa.
What should the run be
Maybe.
to be at that angle or less than that angle? But we don't have a lot of space, so we probably just want to use that angle. We can't change the height, but we could go back to the builder and be like, okay, we need the ramp longer than we initially thought.
This angle would be.
So, rise is 3.
Yeah.
Run, we now don't know, but the angle of incline that like the ramp makes needs to be 4.76 degrees.
Oh, you could just use. So 6.84 would be the highest though.
No, that was unacceptable. That was like the plans they gave us, 3 feet, 25 feet. It was unacceptable. It would be too sharp.
It's 36. I figured it out.
Nope, you get to 36.
Guys, it's
It would
in-
be like half an inch.
36.6.
I don't like using X, especially since we just had like.
The
Well,
boy who
yeah, I guess X works there.
36.027. 36.0.
Now, for our classmates that weren't here yesterday, who can remind us what we can do in this problem to make life easy? Richner?
You can switch the place of tan and then the X.
Yeah, I can switch places in a proportion diagonally. Right? So if I switch the places, we just do 3 divided by tangent of 4.76
Yeah.
equals that unknown value, which now is over 1, right? Which doesn't matter. And Thomas, you get?
36.3.
No.
0.
No.
Wait,
Yeah.
0.3.
Whoa, calm yourself.
I'm at 0.
Mistakes are a good thing. You guys need to stop
You
jumping
can't
on each
put
other.
0.02
No.
because that would be like a thousandth of a degree off to.
Now, have you ever
It's a
seen...
round up.
Yes, we would round up to make it safer. If you've ever seen surveyors out, the guys with the yellow tripods and they're only looking through stuff, or there's like a guy with like a marking stick somewhere, this is the sort of stuff they're actually doing. So, no joke, in one of those like career options of you probably wouldn't need to go to college, but you would need to have certain training, like there's a lot of math skills involved in like all kinds of things. Even how high is that stoplight going to be compared to like trucks driving under it? What's the angle of that bridge to make sure that the water runs off it? Like all this different math that you never think of, but somebody's got to plan it.
So why are they building a ramp that's 26?
36 now, because if there, so
36.
ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, has set down certain standards, certain policies, and one of the things is certain buildings have to have handicap accessibility. Because if Levi wants to go get a driver's license, he needs to be able to get in the DMV or like whatever else or wherever we're traveling, and their ramps can't just be like 45 degrees because that wouldn't make any sense. Like, great, you put in a ramp that doesn't do anything.
We'll make a 90.
So,
It's just like a
if- Guys,
It's a 90-degree angle ramp.
their state building code, whatever state they're referencing here, that state has determined an acceptable angle is 4.76. You make a ramp with an angle of 5,
No.
doesn't work.
Wait,
I
no,
know.
is that the actual acceptable?
I don't know what state they're talking about, but CPM uses like real information, so I'm sure somebody like lived in a state and they looked up like ADA ramp
Couldn't
angle.
they just like make it like, I've seen that done before.
Yeah, like an angle. So this is a good point. If Satya says, well, if they only have 25 feet coming this way, they could then like angle it off, right? Do little ramp up and like turn and then another ramp. But like their plans didn't work, right? We need an extra about 11 feet.
Why does the hallway just like 3 feet higher than the ground?
It's outside.
But
It's,
why would you build that?
like it's outside entrance.
Hey, 'cause I live in
Sir,
Ohio.
dude, if you ever go over to the place where Mrs. Cullinan lives, New Albany. New Albany built a really nice campus-style high school. Their buildings are disconnected. So depending on what building you have class in, you might have to go outside. So if like I had gym over here and then I go to the auditorium, which is in a different space so that the loudness of the gym is away from the loudness of the auditorium, I might go outside and might have to take a ramp or stairs to get up into the building because most buildings are above ground level.
Or like a little kind of bridge that is like 2 feet up. You've got like saving room, maybe.
Is Tom
Probably
not in that?
Potentially.
I don't know.
Thomas?
What? What am I?
Kind of. It depends on what part of the building you're in. then Kilborn's got 2 at least.
Kilborn
Yeah,
has
Kilborn's got 2
two.
usable, and I don't know if there's a basement
Thomas
anywhere.
has 2 in a basement. Kilborn has an
Oh, I thought you were about
unused basement.
Yeah.
Wait,
How
Thomas
does
have
he
a
force?
basement, and
Yeah, they have
I've seen
ground
people
level
like
there.
Thomas
This is
have
so
a-
Yeah,
long.
depending on what part of Kilborn you're in, there's a lower level. You can see it when you're like walking the walkway
Yeah.
back to the to get back to the stadium or whatever. All right, so check it out. If we had this, we would have to use cosine, right? So if we inverse cosine, because we have adjacent and we have hypotenuse, we essentially have inverse cosine of 1/2, right? The run is half of, we what?
It's a special triangle.
Ah, it's a special. So what's this going to be? Well, we're not trying to solve
Where is
this.
3 times 8?
8 squared of
Yeah,
3 squared.
if we were trying to solve the angle, we would use the inverse. But if we didn't know this angle and we recognize that the hypotenuse is twice the leg, then we can figure out it's a 3069.
Why didn't you do inverse cosine?
If they didn't know the angle. When you compute that, do you get 60? Is this set up right? Is half the hypotenuse your big leg or your short leg?
Exactly.
Let's double check this. What if,
Oh yeah, that would make sense.
That's sine. Inverse sine.
well, it depends. If I know 8 and I know 16, I can use either of them. So if I use sine, I'd have 16 sine of 60, or sorry, yeah, 16 sine of 60. What's that get us for here?
8 squared of 3.
Yeah, 8 square root of 3. It's going to be something weird. It's going to be 8 rad 3. So that's our longer leg because it's opposite the 60. What'd you get, sir?
40646.
You don't have to. Just write out like this.
All right, so I want you guys to try a few of these on your own to make sure we're comfortable. So if you know that the triangle here is made of a 14 run and a 15 hypotenuse, or the actual distance traveled up the ramp, then 2 questions. What is this angle and what is this height? What is that angle and what is that height? And there's multiple ways to solve it. Excuse me. Would pretzels be an acceptable snack for me?
Pretty decent.
No one's allergic to it.
I
Oh,
think pretzels are pretty safe. There's math counts today. Because we could not have it last week.
No, I know Tuesday. Is it Wednesday or?
Today's Tuesday. We're going to
No,
do
when is
Tuesdays, Thursdays.
Okay.
Because I have to kind of be available to help with Go Club on Mondays and Wednesdays.
Okay, I'll
So
come.
math counts today. If you want to take one of the math counts worksheets that we're going to talk about today, it's on the outside of my classroom, the wall right over there.
I'm never gonna be here for extensions on Tuesday.
The ones I put out there last
Yeah.
week. Yeah, the ones.
Find angle A and angle B.
We're going to go over these problems today. We're probably not going to work on them for super long, but the one that's warm up 1 and warm up 2, the no calculators one. This is going to be a week of no calculator, and the next week I think we'll do calculator stuff. Or at least today will be no calculator.
I got a since that favor.
Then check your work. I mean, you did something wrong in the calculator. I don't know why, but I like the angle
Is it 21?
being on the left. You don't have to copy that, but I like the angle on the left. So, if I want to figure out this theta, I have what sides?
You have adjacent.
Adjacent hypotenuse.
So you should do cosine, inverse cosine, and then
14 divided by 15.
yeah, and that gives you 21.
Just 21?
21.03946978.
So, like 0.4.
Yeah.
Rounded.
Oh, so height.
Gosh darn it, Jacob.
No one just messed up.
So then, and here's the thing I want to keep reminding. If you are trying to find the height of the triangle, we could do Pythagorean because that would use both numbers that have been given to us. Or we can use the angle that we found, but that's always dangerous. So be careful that if you use something you found, that you check, does it make sense? Right, so this is a 21-degree angle, not tiny, right? Not a tiny acute angle. So, Jacob, what function did you use, though?
I used tangent.
Tangent, so that you were dealing with that and the 14.
Yes. I just.
Now, you could Pythagorean. We know that we could do that because it's a right triangle. Rise over run, so my unknown rise, my known run, that sets up a nice proportion because I can just throw the 14 over in front of the tangent.
So if you do sine too.
If you are doing opposite hypotenuse, yeah.
Yeah, so x over 15 then.
Yeah, but then this is sine of 21.04, so that is what will. You should get the same answer regardless.
What is the tan function?
Sorry, I just changed my x into h, but what do you mean? What is the tan function?
Like when you type in tan, what does tan mean?
It is compute. So essentially, it's got a bunch of data saved inside, and it says with an angle of this given size, which is what you're inputting, you get a slope of this. And it just knows all the data. It knows how to compute it. Or inversely, literally inversely, if you plug in the slope, it spits out what angle makes that slope. Because think about similar triangles. All because my slope is 1/2 doesn't mean my triangle is literally 1/2. It's just a slope of 1/2. But that angle doesn't change no matter how big the triangle is. Similar triangles.
So it doesn't use a function that knows the answer.
I mean, you can look at it. Probably does have a function, like input-output sort of function, but it's likely very complicated.
But when it just types in tan plus the equal.
So here's your task. Outside of class, research. If you're mastered and done with everything else, how does trig happen? Like, how does it actually process it? Like, how does my calculator solve trig? Like, if you want to, dig into that. But, like, that's beyond what I learned. Thomas?
If you plugged in, like, the data set of your calculator, would it make, like, the circle graph thing?
What do you mean?
Like, you know how, like, you said the calculator has, like, a big data set of,
Yeah.
of a lot of things? If you put all those points...
Oh, like, it knows the unit
Would
circle.
it be a circle?
Yeah, well, it depends on what you're actually asking, but yeah, it knows the unit circle.
Like,
Because if you plug in
tangent
any amount of radians in there, it knows you're rotating around a circle, and then it's going to give you data based off sine or cosine, whether it's the x or the y value. Yeah, so yes, I think, if I understand your question, then yes. What's our height here?
5.3.
Wait,
5.39.
yeah, 5.3853.
Relatively
5.33 squared, actually. Excuse me, what?
So I like this little visual that you also have on the worksheet that I handed out yesterday,
The square root of 21. 9.
with these sides bolded.
Oh,
Oh, and by the way, for you guys that weren't here,
we're not here.
What the heck? Stop the madness.
Do you know that your hand's shaking because your skeleton trying to hatch?
Really?
I already knew that.
He's
right
right
on
here.
you.
Tell me something I don't know.
there's one for you about choosing trig tools.
Besides,
And we went over a bunch of these yesterday. So, with your team, try 80. Try all three of these.
80.
Oh, there.
Yeah.
Hey, we don't say 70.
So not on that worksheet, but similar. And I guess I'll put this here to make your life easy for a minute.
For A, you could use sine. Yeah, you could use sine.
You just use cosine, dude.
Actually, no, you could use cosine.
Yeah,
Just
use
flip the triangles.
What are you even talking about?
Hey, he's not in your group. Let him be.
12 over 24.
Wait. The theta is 12 over 624.
Wait. Is it that time?
Okay, so if we use Inverse, yeah, inverse cosine equals
That would be
Inverse cosine of 12
Adjacent
divided
12,
by
yeah.
inverse cosine.
Or just
of-
1/2.
63 cosine.
Yeah, and you get special.
Hold on.
60.
No, we don't have a.
Theta equal
What do you-
an even 60 or
Oh, no, wait.
60?
I wrote them.
It's a special triangle.
I'm doing B. You know B. B 5.
Oh, I don't think I noticed that.
Okay,
Sorry,
great.
second one's hard.
Here
comes the hard.
Well, if
It's also special. I just wrote 40.
Are we talking-
If we recognize a relationship in A, we don't even really need the trig.
Yeah.
Just go like.
If we recognize a relationship in B,
You don't need it at all.
we don't even need the trig.
I think we need to see.
C seems pretty necessary for the trig.
Sine 57 equals 7. Will you call me?
Do I use sine or cosine here?
I mean,
Sine.
you
Either.
should use
Either or.
probably sine because you've got opposite.
Oh yeah, close.
You should
No.
do
Sine.
Sine.
Yeah,
How could I use cosine?
By
Using
using
cosine and doing x over 7.
Yeah.
I know this angle actually,
Yeah.
right?
We got it.
So if we use that angle, we could use cosine. But here, sine of 57 equals opposite over hypotenuse. I can switch places. 7 divided by sine of 57.
5.8. 8.35.
What? I heard you.
8.35.
Yeah.
Because it's not hypotenuse.
I was about to say 5 doesn't make
Oh, I
sense.
put. Hold on. I put the wrong number. Young.
X equals
So
8.35.
of your Hawaiian candy also melt your
Wait,
brain.
okay.
8.36.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or how?
Oh, yeah.
He doesn't
I
do it.
melt your brain.
All right, now we need to help Peter.
Who's Peter? What?
He's a pumpkin eater.
Oh,
He's a
he must be fat.
Heat
What?
hair,
What?
heat hair.
Pumpkins
Fine,
are healthy.
heat hair.
Pumpkin cause
Pumpkins are
Pumpkin seeds are
Everything in California.
All right. So Peter,
Except for cancer itself.
Have you ever been to California? You're a place with fumes and it's like
Okay,
cancer.
Chris, chill.
Peter's work.
Yeah.
He did that wrong. If he's trying to figure out the theta, he needs an inverse.
Yeah.
Sure.
Oh my
Jacob.
I mean, yeah, but
Jacob.
analyze deeper. I mean, he knows that sure you need to apply
Greater than
inverse.
1. It can't be greater than 1.
What do you mean it can't be greater than 1?
8 divided by 2.
Because the hypotenuse can't
Yeah,
be
the
shorter than
hypotenuse is shorter.
leg.
So what do you think he did?
He did the hypotenuse on top.
He actually flipped it.
yeet.
If you get an error from your calculator, and I don't know where Satya went to since he got a syntax error already today, you get an error, there's a reason. Analyze why. Don't just say, well, I got it wrong, I suck at life. Like, analyze what you did. Peter just accidentally flipped it. He put hypotenuse on top and the adjacent on the bottom. If he flips it over, 2.736 on top, 8 on bottom, then his calculator will work when we inverse cosine that, and we will get an angle.
Let's see what it is.
Magic.
Questions?
Oh my god.
That's pretty
It's
much it.
savage.
So you have 10 minutes to do your homework. You know, funny enough, I keep saying that to myself when I'm out disc golfing and I don't have a towel to like dry my discs when they get dirty. So I'm like, man, I forgot a towel.
And then all the people who weren't here yesterday are like,